Now, tell us what happened after that interview, and I guess, if I can call it a conversion or a road to Damascus or whatever else you want to call it, tell us the story.
Well, I just found it very difficult to defend those claims, and, you know, the language that was being discussed were not things that I had said. So it was kind of imperative for me that I step away from that role anyway. But I was trying to do something good in Extinction Rebellion, which was, you know, just talk about environmental issues, talk about moving towards solutions. And I actually was already pro-nuclear, but not, you know, I hadn't come out as pro-nuclear, for want of a better phrase. And I realized that, again, you know, I couldn't in that role. So I kind of stepped away, and I ended up having this conversation with Michael Schellenberger, who actually, based on that interview, that Andrew Neil interview, wrote a article kind of similarly criticizing me. And I got in touch with him, and I said, actually, you know, it was difficult, and I'm not making alarmist claims, but I want to talk about these issues. And we ended up talking about all kinds of different things. And I went away and watched his TED talk, and I said, look, I already am pro-nuclear. And he said, but would you actually tell people that you are? Would you come out and say it? Because that would be really powerful. And we had a conversation about that. And I said, actually, I think it's time to start talking about solutions, and it's absolutely time to stick my head above the parapet and just say, yeah, we need nuclear power.
And what has been the reaction, Zion, to your coming out? So you're now advocating for nuclear. What has been the reaction from your former colleagues on Extinction Rebellion?
I'd say that they've been mixed. So I have had, of course, some of the negative comments. You know, some people have felt that they don't understand the decision. Some people are just, you know, they're just so anti-nuclear, not just in Extinction Rebellion, but in society. They're so afraid of it, and so they misunderstand the facts so much that there is no convincing them. And there's no convincing them that this is actually a really good thing to do, and this is what we should be doing. But I've also had some support. I've also had a surprising number of people who've said, actually, we agree. And now I'm saying to them, will you come out and say, I'm pro-nuclear? You know, will you campaign with me? Because I think it's really important that we do it at this time.
Rita.
Why do you think so many people who are passionate about climate change, passionate about zero net emissions, are anti-nuclear when it is the solution to that without decimating people's livelihoods and living standards? Why is there this resistance amongst so many climate change activists?
There is a lot of fear around nuclear power. There is a lot of there are so many myths and misconceptions. And I'm working through them now. I get tweeted stuff every day. What about waste? What about radiation? And I say, well, you know, let's talk about radiation. What are you worried about? People died at Fukushima. Nobody died at Fukushima from radiation. The 575 deaths, I think it was, were from during the evacuation process and some of the panic that ensued. You know, nobody died from radiation. And then I say, go away and look it up. And sometimes actually, you know, again, to be fair to people, sometimes they look it up and they say, okay, that's true. And other times there's just absolutely no conversation to be had, and it can be difficult to ascertain which way the conversation is going, because I want to have those conversations. I think it's really imperative that we kind of, you know, we say the climate activism movement says we should follow the science, and Greta Thunberg says that as well. And you know, science is telling us that nuclear is safe. The IPCC report says that we need it. We need it to meet our energy needs. I think it's absolutely time to embrace that. And if that means having difficult conversations and getting some difficult emails, you know, I'm willing to do that.
James.
So I'm wondering here, Zion, how many people in the Extinction Rebellion and the hard radical end of things actually aren't afraid of nuclear because of the potential radiation, but because it might actually provide people with their needs. What I'm trying to say is, how much of the hard radical Extinction Rebellion mob is really about, you know, trying to eliminate our consumer lifestyles? They'd rather change. They want to eliminate capitalism. When I've spoken to Extinction Rebellion people, they see parliamentary democracy as something to be replaced by sort of tribunals and all sorts of other sorts of revolutionary things. Is the danger of nuclear not that it won't work, but rather that for some of them it will work all too well in allowing people to remain in their capitalist lifestyles, which is really the target for an awful lot of these people?
So this is a really good question, because I would say Extinction Rebellion is quite a wide movement, and there are people like me in it, and there are scientists and academics and all kinds of, different groups of people. And there is that faction of people who do want, so one of the discussions I had on Twitter recently was someone saying, why don't we just reduce consumption? And I said, we can't keep our hospitals running and our homes warm by just reducing consumption. Do you know how much energy you're talking about? And I think actually, maybe that person did think, well, it doesn't matter, we should anyway. And that, that's not what I want, and that's not what plenty of people in XR want. But some of those views are pushed forward by some of the members, and it becomes kind of representative. But yeah, I was in Extinction Rebellion to try and have these conversations, and I think that there was a lot of headway there, and that again, a lot of people don't agree that we should just cut everything back, and that they understand that that's not the solution. But there's a lot of conflict, is what I would say, on the inside of people who think one thing and people who think another. And the kind of way that they get around that is by just saying, let's not focus on solutions. But then that makes it very difficult to say, I'm pro-nuclear, because they don't have a view on nuclear. They're not officially anti or pro-nuclear. But then, for me now, it's definitely about just looking at solutions.
Xeon Lights, absolutely fascinating. This, as I said, this is why debate is so important. This is why free speech is so important. You are an absolute role model, I hope, for many young people out there. Thanks so much for coming on Outsiders. I urge people to follow you on Twitter at Xeon Lights, ZionLights, and maybe we'll speak to you.
Actually, it's...
Sorry, yep.
It's Xeon. It's actually Xeon Tree.
Xeon Tree, okay,
it's
tell us
at Xeon Tree.
At Xeon Tree, that's even greener, I like it. At Xeon Tree. Thanks so much, Xeon, for coming on Outsiders.